Before I get started, please let me get the plug in there. If you are going to order products from Amazon, we would appreciate it if you would go down below, click on the links, and go to Amazon through one of our links. It does help our ministry when products sell through those links. So just to let you know, any products that I discussed today, I will be putting links down below. One of those will be sorry about that. One of those will be my Nesco food and jerky dehydrator. So we will have a link below for that. I will also link to extra trays because you might need those as well. I currently have a set of 6 on my Nesco, and it has been working this week. The next thing I would like to say is please remember to subscribe and turn on notifications. That way you get any notifications for any up and coming videos that I have set to release, and they will automatically notify you if you are subscribed and turn those notifications on. And the last thing I would like to say is that this is October 4th, I believe. I have to check and make sure. Yes, it is Friday, October 4th. This is 2024. And if you are not aware of what has happened in the South, in the southern United States, please go to the news channels, such as Fox News has been covering it, and there have been other news outlets who are properly covering the situation down in North Carolina, Tennessee, South Carolina, Georgia, Virginia, West Virginia, Kentucky. Those states, and in Florida, my apologies, I almost forgot Florida. Those states have been hit by a hurricane. And when I say hit, I mean hit. And our thoughts and our prayers are with each and every family right now that is touched by this situation. In this situation, I will be honest. If you live in a holler, if you live in a valley, there isn't a lot you could have done to avoid what happened. The number of inches of rain that fell in a short period of time, there isn't much regarding preparedness that you could do to prevent what happened once you're living in the holler. There are a lot of times when I joke in some of my videos that everything runs downhill and it's raining again and it's going to run downhill. The year that we moved here, 2016, June, there was a flood that hit Raynell, West Virginia, and areas surrounding it. There had been logging that had been going on for quite a while before that, and that water, that rain that fell just washed down the mountainside. We were still living in the hotel at the time. We hadn't gone to settlement on our home. And we were watching it on the news. And one thing I remember was a house, literally, on the news, floating down the river, and it got caught up against a bridge. That stuck with me this whole time. So when things started happening in the Carolinas, I knew what they were going through in a minuscule amount because of homes that were just literally picked up off the foundations, and in some cases basements were ripped out of the ground. It is going to take a long time for that area to recover. What can we do in the meantime? Help where you can. If you are able to, donate to the organizations that you feel will use all or the majority of your money, your donation for the proper things that need to be done in those areas. Stand up for the families who are having their property stolen from them through land grabs, through eminent domain. Do what you can to stand for the people and help the people. There are amazing Americans who have come forward to help. I don't think I could list them all. but some that have touched my hearts because of things that they've done. The Cajun Navy, and especially the group called Cajun Navy 2016. Gosh, you guys and ladies, love you. The Cajun Navy has come out in so many circumstances over the years since their inception, and they have helped in so many situations with getting food and water and supplies to people. The mule trains and the people riding horses in to bring people supplies, bringing in insulin, medical supplies, food, water, diapers, clothing for children. I added it up, and just if they work 1 week, the one mule team, if all 12 mules carrying 200 pounds each just make one trip a day, that's 2,400 pounds just in one trip a day. And if they just made one trip a day for 5 days in a row, that's over 10,000 pounds of food and water and supplies. And I saw one group of the Cajun Navy guys, they even had stuffed animals for the little ones. Praise God for them. For them going in and getting it done. Some of these people were there within hours of the need being known. And I praise them for that. So, I don't keep crying through this. I'm going to talk to you about some things. When Jim and I were looking for a home, it took a couple of years for us to find the home. We kept trying to get God to tell us where we wanted to move and that place was right. More times than I can count, we went to look at a house, drove from New Jersey to look for a house, and it didn't come through. I can't count how many times, and my favorite weekend was the last weekend. We actually came to West Virginia to look at a particular house. I was making calls on the way down, trying to find a realtor to show us that house. I finally got through to a realtor office, a real estate office, and the realtor that answered the phone was there on a prompting of the Holy Spirit. She is a Christian. She showed up. She told us, she says, I wasn't supposed to be here. She showed up on that day because something told her she should go into the office, and she did, and the phone was ringing and no one else was answering it. She answered it and it was me. Her name is Angie, and she dug information about the house we wanted to see, and come to find out it was under contract to another couple. She spent that whole weekend going all over West Virginia because we had determined that was the weekend we were going to find a house one way or another. Sunday came. Every time I gave her a list of, this is another list of 10 homes, 20 homes, we gave her that list. It was a Wednesday or a Thursday when we came into town. And we stayed down in Princeton, and her office is down in the Princeton, West Virginia area where Bluefield overlaps West Virginia and Virginia. We thought that was the area we were supposed to be in. Every time we went to look at a house and we were going to put a bid in on a house, every stinking time that house got a bid and accepted before we could even file our bid. It was crazy. That final day we were here, and I can't remember whether it was Sunday or Monday, I gave her a list, and she called in the morning and she said, every house on this list went under contract yesterday, and it was a list of well over 12 homes all over southern West Virginia, and there wasn't a single house for us to go look at left. I was dumbstruck. We both were weary, we were tired, we had pretty much given up, and Jim said, you know what, I'm going to shower, we're going back to New Jersey, and I'm done, I'm not coming anymore. If God wanted us here, he'd have found us a house already. So he went to shower, and while he was in the shower, Angie called back. And she said, you're not going to believe this, that house you wanted to come look at, the couple that was going to buy it just backed out of the deal. It's taking too long. They don't want it. If you can look at it today before 5 p.m., the realtor will hold relisting it until you decide if you want to put in a bid. That house is the house we are currently living in. And it is the house we came here to see. It is a house I hated. Jim kept telling me in like January, February, we should go look at the house. We should go. And I kept saying no. Laying down the gauntlet before God. He was sitting there and he said, we should go look at that house. And I said, you know what, fine. I give up. You want to go look at that house? We looked at so many other ones. I said, if you want to go look at that house, if that house drops $20,000, or I said $10,000, I think. I can't remember. It was either 10 or 20. But a certain amount, I will go look at that house. In fact, I'll put a bid in on that house, sight unseen. He pulled it up on my iPad and showed it to me, and it had dropped $10,000 more than what I had said. I think it dropped $30,000. I just sat there and went, well, guess what? Now I have to stand by my word. That was the house we came to see that week. That is this house. And Angie and God literally moved mountains for us to get in here. Our settlement date was supposed to be 2 or 3 weeks out. We went back to New Jersey. We got U-Haul containers. We packed everything up. And we stayed in the hotel. Well, during that hotel stay, before we went to settlement on this house, that was when the floods happened in Raynell. And I was so grateful over the years because every time we thought this is going to be the house, God stopped us for some reason or another. I remember looking at homes and saying, wait, that's on the side of a hill. That's not going to be good if we get floods, if we get bad rains. We're going to be going down the hill. For years we watched California, all of these places where they build houses on the hills, and how many mudslides, how many house slides have you seen happen in the news? So we wouldn't choose those homes. There was a home on a flat plateau that we loved in a small little community area. It was surrounded by lots of rural area, but there was a railroad down below. And don't you know, we were thinking about that house, and within the time we wanted to come and look at it, there was a train derailment and a fire and chemicals released, and we went, oh, that's not the house. So every single time there was something that stopped us. But one house sticks out in my mind. There were 2 homes on the property. If we had bought the property, we could have used the second home as a rental property. We thought that would be good because that would help us, A, cover the mortgage if there was any mortgage we needed to cover, and we thought it would be great to, be able to have that added income, residual income. Well, while we were looking at the pictures online, I noticed a watermark on the washing machine downstairs in the basement. And then we started to look through aerial views of the property, and that house, those 2 homes, were literally at the end of a gully. And that water had to have been 3 feet up, at least, on the washing machine. So you're talking a good lot of water in that basement. It wasn't technically a basement. I think it had a car door, a garage door on it. So looking at the gully and how that holler just went right through the mountains, and how the downhill slope of that holler was unbelievable, and it headed right to the house, right to both houses. So here we would have been dealing with a renter having a flooded home, and our own dealing with a flooded home. We opted not to buy that house, and that is probably the best advice I can give anyone looking to move to the mountains, to Appalachia, to the Blue Ridge area, to the Alleghenies up in Pennsylvania, to the Rocky Mountains, the California mountains, anywhere you're looking to move. If you're thinking about moving to the mountains, think carefully about how other people have experienced things. We know that weather patterns are getting stronger. We know that some of the storms are getting worse. Look ahead. Decide ahead. It's difficult when you're in an area like Appalachia because this is a family area. Families have been here for decades. Some families have been here for hundreds of years. So they want to stick close to family areas, and that is hard when you're looking for a home if the family area is the whole town being located in a holler. And that is what we see with places like Chimney Rock. They were where everything came together. And a lot of times there's a river or a creek. People said creeks turned into Mississippi rivers through the area, and it happened fast. If you're looking to move to an area where there is a dam, because that's part of the water resource area and the reservoirs are built up, think carefully. How low do you want to be below the dam, or do you want to be up high? We are truly blessed that up here we are literally in a little community on a ridge. And when the trees lose all their leaves and I look out the window in the wintertime, I can see the next 5 or 10 ridges. I like being up here. I've grumbled for a few years because I wanted 5+ acres, but this is definitely, this just under an acre is enough for us. I can garden, have the prayer garden. We see the wildlife, sometimes too much wildlife, although we've not seen the bears, thank goodness. But it's beautiful here and we love it. So those are the things I thought of. Actually, I didn't, Jim thought of, because I said, what do you do? How do you tell people how to prepare for something like this situation when your whole home is washing away? Everything you have invested in food storage will be gone. The only thing I could suggest in a situation like that is have an emergency location where you have, whether it is a storage unit on higher ground, you buy a little piece of property and build a little shed out there and keep track of it. You will have to have it climate controlled, or a root cellar. You will have to make sure that it's climate controlled and that it doesn't flood. But there are some options that maybe I will put together and go through over time. My big thing was just to cover, what do you think about beforehand? If you're looking to move somewhere into rural America, think carefully about where you're going to go. Pray, 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 pray. Because we truly did, and God led us here. It was interesting because God gave Jim a dream about Babcock State Park and the mill that is there. And that is what led us to West Virginia. It was not even on our radar. The Southwest was, Wyoming, the Northwest, Lancaster, North and South Carolina, Tennessee, all of these areas. But if you're going to go to the mountains, I suggest you look for high ground. Just a thought. Now, the other thing I wanted to think of is, or talk to you about, is what to do after the fact. Okay, we lost our power for just over 24 hours. It was probably close to 30 hours, but not quite 36. We had a lot of flickering beforehand, but people around us had already lost their power. We didn't lose ours till about 4 hours after everybody else. And then we lost it, and this is the first time in years I have not had a full freezer. We have the big upright, and normally I have a full freezer. Normally there's at least one frozen chicken. The year that I've talked about in the past where we had the ice storm and our freezer was off for 5 days, we actually had a 20-something pound turkey down in the bottom. So between the turkey and the frozen water jugs that I had on the top shelf, we had more than enough that kept that freezer frozen for the entire 5 days. However, I lost a few things on the door, and I never thought back then. They were frozen vegetables, and they were not fully thawed until the last day before the power came back on. I had a dehydrator at the time. One of those smack your head moments. I didn't think to do what I did this time. Now this time we ran the risk of a lot of stuff thawing if I didn't do what I did. Step number 1. Take the time to think for yourself, okay, this is day 1, and they're estimating it could take up, because at the time they were estimating it would be 3 days before our power was restored here during Helene. Now prior to Helene actually hitting us, we had already had 6+ inches of rain. Once Helene came, we got more, and all total, after she went through and then came back around and smacked us again, we ended up with over 12 inches of rain in under 7 days, which is not anything in comparison to what they've dealt with in the other southern areas. But we lost that power, and I thought to myself, now I got to think what to do, because I knew ahead of time that that freezer wasn't full. I had 4 half gallons of frozen milk on the top. I don't do bottled water anymore. I use frozen milk because we got caught 7 weeks in the house in winter, unable to leave because of snow and ice on our road, and we don't have a 4-wheel drive vehicle. Another thing, if you're going to move to the mountains, get a 4-wheel drive. We had one when we moved here, but it broke, and we haven't been able to replace our Chevy SUV yet. It's a little tiny crossover. Yeah, with a 4-wheel drive, and it only has a front wheel, but 4-wheel drive. So anyway, I keep milk in there because we would have been without milk for 7 weeks if it hadn't been from our blessed neighbor picking up our Kroger orders for us. So I took the frozen milk off the top shelf, put it in the bottom basket with all of our meat and as much of our frozen foods that would fit down there in that basket. The next thing I did was on top of that basket, the next shelf up, wire shelving, I piled as much of the frozen vegetables and fruits and whatever else we had, and I piled that on top, covered it with boxes, and then on top of that shelf we have frozen blocks of goo that came with our old HelloFresh subscription. I have kept a lot of those, and they are in there as well. That helped keep the freezer going. So I kept that going and that kept pretty much everything safe. However, I did end up with some things, and these have actually been refrozen, probably not the best idea. They were almost completely thawed, and I stuck them back in the freezer. Corn, mixed vegetables, some green beans that were little tiny pieces rather than the whole green beans. The whole green beans were easier to fit actually in some of the little holes in that big basket down there. We had some things that needed to get taken care of. Now I could have done what I did the last time and I could have thrown them away, or I could have done what I did this time and I chose to do this. I hit my Nesco as soon as the power came back on. I was opening up bags of vegetables and dumping them on rack after rack after rack, and I filled all 5 racks with vegetables from the freezer, and then the other 2 racks, or the other rack, I filled 4 racks, and then the other 2 racks were filled with some chives and sage that I had picked before the power outage that needed to get dehydrated for the pantry. I took care of that. These are the things that you have to do during an emergency or post-emergency outage or whatever your circumstance is. Start thinking about the things that you can save. Is there anything I can salvage? Now, what would I have done if the meat had thawed? Well, one, I would have kept it as cold as possible until I could process it. And I do have 1 pressure canning pot, but I know that I would need another one. And I'm looking into getting another one. I also need to replace this one because it's got some issues. But in the meantime, I would hit the the pressure canning, and I would can my meats. Whatever I had and whatever I could. I would can it in different sizes depending on what we would need. Minimum for the 2 of us would be a pint size, and then I would do some quarts for big meals. And I would can whatever I can. If the power was going to be out for an extended period of time, I would try to pressure can outside. Now, I've never done that, but I have a friend who taught me how to do it a long time ago, but we don't have a propane setup where we could do that. That is another thing. I am already looking into trying to find a propane setup because I would want to be able to do that. And what I mean is there is a propane stand with a flame that you can set a pot right on top of, and I could do that and monitor and gauge the pressure better. Water bath canning, if you have any acidic products like tomatoes, things like that in your freezer, you could take care of that easy. Fruits, you can make jams real fast out of if you have sugar in your food storage. You could also dehydrate meats. Now, I'm not going to give you instructions on how to dehydrate meats right now because I have to refresh my memory on those things, and praise God, our meat did not thaw. So we were fine in that respect. But these are things you need to think of, what you can do in the meantime. So I'm trying to think what else. Looking at my notes. What do you do for the fridge? Think now about getting yourself a good 5-day cooler, minimum 5-day cooler. If you can get one that says it will keep it cool for 7 days or more, get that cooler. Get yourself ice packs of some kind. These refreezable ice packs are very, very handy. I thank HelloFresh. Did us a great job, great service by sending those to us every week. I keep those until they start to leak, and then I dispose of them. But try to get yourself some of those ice packs so that you can use them to help keep your freezer, your refrigerator, and your big freezer, chest freezer, or upright freezer cold during a situation like that. Now, we have a wine fridge, and you'll see, I keep doing that. I'll stick the picture up here of all the pickles that I had in there, and I had to find a place to put those. What I did was I took the pickles out of the wine fridge, stuck them on the top shelf inside the upright freezer, because that shelf was at about 50 degrees when the whole power outage was over, but it was about 38 degrees when I put the pickles in there, so it was operating like a refrigerator. So I was able to do that. Now, I also noticed that there are some other things that I have to take care of still. Something that partially thawed but did not thaw completely. Tomatillos. I had a big bag of tomatillos in there, and I had some peppers in there, but we ate those actually recently. But the tomatillos and peppers, think outside the box. What was I going to do with the tomatillos to begin with? I was going to make salsa verde. So now's the time I need to make the salsa verde. So I made sure I got the cilantro and the ingredients I need to be able to do the salsa verde. And I'll be doing that next week. Luckily, no, I should say blessed. We are blessed that the tomatillos just barely thawed on the outside edges, so those were pretty good. They were still a good solid block. Think of the things that you have that are thawing in your freezer and say, what can I do? What can I dehydrate? I already said corn, green beans, mixed vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, potatoes. If you've processed little potato dices and stuff in there, you can actually put those in your dehydrator. Dehydrate those, put them in the pantry, and they will last 1 year to 3 years. The majority of your products, your vegetables, they will be nutritionally more sound if you use them within 1 year. Make sure you seal the jars or containers that you put them in, or put them in vacuum sealed bags, and keep them in the dark, and please keep them in a cool location if you possibly can. The new guidelines that I read recently say between 50 and 75 degrees, because some people do keep their heaters above 70 in the wintertime. So between 50 and 75 degrees is the new guidelines from most of my expert resources, which I will put those expert resources down in the bottom also, because they will handle your canning and your dehydrating. Another option for meat, cook it. Especially if you have a cooler that you're able to slip things into, you can keep that meat in the cooler for a day or two if your power is expected to come back on. Cook it, take it out, light up the grill, and throw it on the grill. Don't have a grill, but you got a fire pit. I hope you have a rack for the top that you can use for grilling. Start your fire pit or your grill and start cooking that meat. You can eat some and you can save some. Can't save it because you don't have enough room or didn't get that cooler ready yet? Invite the neighbors over and feed everybody. Don't waste it. This is definitely a waste not, want not video. Definitely waste not, want not. There are things that you can do. And in the meantime, remember, get yourself a dehydrator. You do not have to have a really expensive one. I know everybody's into the Excaliburs and the really expensive ones. Would I love to try one? Sure. Excalibur, if you're listening, send me one and I'll give it a shot. But I have used these Nesco, they used to be called American Harvest, dehydrators for years, and I love them. I love them, love them. Now, I am not adventurous. I don't like to go more than 6 trays high, but I know there are other people that will go 10. So they will hold up to 10. You could even get 2 if you have a large family if you need to. So those, another thing that was something I was going to attempt this time, but it ended up being a total loss, was I had some frozen grapes in the freezer for summer, for hot days, and I totally forgot they were in there. Found them and they were partially thawed, and I was going to poke them. Sit here one morning while I was drinking my cappuccino, I was going to just poke them with holes and put them in the dehydrator. And unfortunately, I didn't do that fast enough. They did spoil. They turned a very weird shade of brown goo in the bag. They ended up in the trash. So that is the only thing this time that was a total loss. Everything else I have been able to save. Even these 2 bags of vegetables, even though they were refrozen, they were partially thawed and refrozen, I'm going to dehydrate them. These will go into jars and they will be labeled this date, but capital letters I'm going to write on the lids, use first, because I want to make sure these get used right away. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below. I will be happy to answer what I can. And again, our prayers are with everyone right now. Our prayers are with all of the responders, the volunteers, EMTs, paramedics, emergency management people, anyone and everyone, linemen and linewomen. We love you. Often you're forgotten, and you are not forgotten. Those of us who rely on you getting us through after the fact, we love all you guys. We appreciate you, and we are praying for you. Be safe. Watch out for what's in the water as the floodwaters recede, and watch for all of the sharp objects in the debris, because that's another thing that you'll have to be careful of. I hope that this gives you some things to think about. Blessings and shalom.